What was it like to live in your city?
Uh, City life is very different from the life that we have living in suburbs. There's a lot more activity going on, a lot more noise, a lot more people. Um, City life is a busy life. There's just too many people around you all the time.
Hmm. Well, I lived in a fairly poor part of the town, so it was a little bit nervous making. But I got to know a lot of people in the neighborhood, and there was Prospect Park nearby, so I got to ride my bike around the park on Sundays when the park roads were closed.
It just never stops. Noise-wise, smell-wise, people, it's just always moving, always going.
I don't know. Atlanta's like a pretty diverse, pretty thriving city, in like the downtown area, especially.
I would describe it as noisy, busy, and pretty crowded with people.
How was the public transportation in the city?
Very, very good. Nobody I knew had a car in the city. I was entirely using mostly subways. People avoided and taxis.
So there's a couple different options you have in Chicago. Probably the cheapest ones that you have is the CTA. I'd say the other main route for public transportation is the Metro.
We have bus system, we have what are called rickshaws, and we have cabs. In the city of Karachi, the public transport was very easily accessible to people.
Pretty bad. It's like there's really one main form of public transportation, and its timing is always off.
Because New York is becoming more popular and more populated, and there's just now always a wait for the subway, and it's more crowded than it ever has been. Right. And at the same time, the infrastructure is sort of crumbling. So,
how separated is Atlanta in terms of race and class? Divided or diverse or segregated?
It really depends on what part of Atlanta you're at. There are some areas which are like fairly segregated or like primarily like white, very rich areas, but a good portion of Atlanta is very diverse.
It was a pretty homogeneous population, so there was no separation by race as such, but there was a difference by class, and by class I mean economic class. So depending upon
Yes, it was fairly obvious to everybody, where way uptown New York was Harlem, and more of the Black people lived there. People, it's financially and self-segregating as far as people live in Chinatown were mostly Chinese, things like that. In my neighborhood, most of the people were Black people.
It's a pretty diverse group of people that you see just walking through the city. People literally come from like all over the world to Chicago.
Did you ever notice the sort of middle class or upper class moving into that area?
It was, at the time I lived there, it was more around, I was one of the people gentrifying it in a way, but more of it was happening around either side of that neighborhood. So it was next to a very gentrified neighborhood called Park Slope.
I'd say over the past 5 years, like they rezoned it. The last mayor we had, Mayor Bloomberg, who I think is involved in real estate, rezoned this whole waterfront, and now they're just putting towers. Like there's a 42-story condo building going up a block from my house.
How much and what kind of communication is there between the city government and the residents of the city, if there is any?
Normally you have to like go searching for information when there's like decisions being made about roads or like public issues, I guess.
Yeah, there's town hall meetings, and people have been protesting and trying.
I don't think the residents of the city had easy access to city government officials. No. If there is any communication for the city government would appear in newspapers.
Yeah, television would have public service announcements. Radio would have the same kinds of things, some, I guess, too. I think there was more communication among like community organizations trying to publicize their services that they had available and things like that.
What factors about your environment do you like or dislike?
Atlanta's like a fairly polluted city, I want to say. It's like definitely, it has some really nice parks, open areas, green areas. And there's been a movement recently, or a lot of like people trying to push going for like a greener city. But for the most part, it's, yeah, it can be like very packed together, or like parks and open areas and green areas are taken away for new developments and that sort of thing. So
Some streets, side streets would have more trees than the main avenues, and I lived on a main avenue. So I did not see so many trees. I didn't feel like the air was terribly polluted, you know, what I was breathing every day, but I am an asthma sufferer, and I did have breathing problems now and then.
Well, Karachi is a highly polluted city. There's a lot of noise pollution and there's a lot of air pollution. Luckily, it was a coastal city and a windy city, so every evening we will have this coast wind from the breeze from the sea, which will clear up the air.
How prepared do you think your city is to handle a natural disaster?
not very well at all. It's, I mean, based on what I've seen, just like from the snowstorms and that sort of thing,
Oh God.
this city shuts down and it's a mess.
I don't think so. I mean, even now, I don't understand, these buildings that are going up in my neighborhood are directly on the waterfront. And like I said, 42 stories. Like, if a huge storm came, I don't know, like, what could happen? It's like, it doesn't seem safe at all.
The city was just not geared to handle rain. For one, it doesn't rain there very much. And when it does, many parts of the city get flooded, the roads get flooded, so the city is not at all prepared to handle any type of natural disasters.
And what was, in your opinion, the biggest problem with Brooklyn?
But yeah, access to things you need when you can't drive there is certainly a problem with any city.
Political corruption. And from that stems all sorts of other problems, just like taxes, debt.
Corruption, especially in school districts, is a major problem in a lot of Atlanta school counties.